What's up, you young whippersnappers? In this video, I'm gonna explain to you guys the 5 training mistakes most teenagers are making when first getting into the gym. And the reason I know this so well is because I started training when I was 17 years old at 115 pounds. But first off, you're probably wondering, why am I in my garage? I don't really know either, but let's get into the video. All right guys, the reality is there's really more than 5 points of how to improve your training when you're first getting started. You know, when you're young, the principles are gonna be the same as if you're older for the most part. There's gonna be some changes, but the principles are still mostly the same. And so what I'm gonna do in this video is just compile the 5 main points that you can implement right now. They're gonna make the biggest difference in your training if you're just getting started. If you're a young buck, you know, you're 16, 17, 18 years old, these are the things that are gonna make all the difference in your training. And it's really what took me from 115 pounds to where I'm at right now, 190 pounds in just 5 years. So point number 1 is not understanding what scalable training is. And let me explain to you guys. When I first got started training, I thought the way you built muscle was just based off of intensity, right? Go to the gym, give it my all, I'm gonna make gains. And this is true up until a certain point. Intensity is probably one of the biggest variables of training. There are certain ways to modulate intensity which are gonna give you more bang for your buck and are more scalable. So what I was doing when I was first going to the gym is I was grabbing any kind of weight that felt comfortable and going 10-10s. Everything to failure. I'm talking like giving my heart and my soul to every single set. In fact, there were some training days where I actually made myself cry in the gym, and I think it was because I just fried my CNS. It wasn't like I was feeling emotional, there was just tears coming down from my eyes, and it was very weird. But I think this was a combination of training 7 days per week and just killing myself in the gym. And I did build muscle. This was an okay way to build muscle. We're talking supersetting everything, taking everything to failure, very short rest times in between sets. But the reality is the body needs a stimulus that's gonna be higher than the previous stimulus at a certain point, right? Your body wants to be in homeostasis, so eventually you kind of have to up the ante. And you can't work any harder if you're working 10-10s. And so this is where implementing progressive overload comes into place. And the easiest way to increase the stimulus is to simply add more weight to the bar. And I wasn't doing this. The first year in the gym, I was just grabbing weight that felt comfortable, hammering it out, and not really getting any stronger. And like I said, it worked for the first little bit, but after a while, I just plateaued. And there's quite a few ways to modulate progressive overload. I'm not gonna touch on them in this video, but one of the easiest ways is to look at adding more weight to your lifts. So number 2 kind of piggybacks on this. Once I started developing this mindset of looking to get incrementally stronger over time, well then my form just went out the window, right? I gave no F's about form and just put all my attention on moving weight. And this is great if you're a power lifter. This is great if your only intention is to move more weight. But if you want to build muscle, not only do you have to move more weight over time, you also have to still get a contraction in the desired muscle. And this is a principle that even to this day I struggle with. For example, last year I got really into my seated dumbbell shoulder press. I was hitting the hundreds for 6 to 8 reps, terrible contraction, kind of shaky form, and the results were lackluster. Now a year later, I've dialed it back a little bit. I'm hitting like the 80s to 85, maybe in the 70s towards the later part of my workout. But I'm actually focusing on my form. I have a really good tempo on that movement. I'm really manipulating the eccentric to get the most bang out of the buck on the negative. I have a nice little isometric hold at the bottom, power that up, and now I'm getting really, really good contractions in really all 3 heads of my shoulder, and the results have been phenomenal. So it's not only do you want to get stronger, you also want to figure out how to balance strength with proper contraction. So a couple ways I like to get a better contraction or mind muscle connection in any body part is, one, to slow it down a little bit. So kind of slow that tempo down. I like to shoot for like a 2 or 3 second negative, maybe half a second hold on the bottom at like an isometric, and then, I don't know, let's call it like a second kind of explosive concentric movement, and I like to do this on any kind of movement. That's usually a good format to follow. The other thing I like to do is before I get into my set, I'll palpate the desired muscle. So if I'm hitting shoulders, I'll just squeeze it a little bit just to kind of cue my mind, like, okay, yeah, this is my anterior head of my delt, lateral head of my delt, got my rear delts back here, and I'll feel that. Then I'll get into my movement, and I've kind of established that connection already. 3, okay, so for all the guys out there, we all want abs, right? Odds are we probably got into the gym because we saw some guys with abs, and we're like, yes, I want that. Here's the problem. In most cases, when you're first getting started, getting abs or getting lean and dieting down should not be your goal by any means. What you want to do is get as much as you can out of those newbie gains. You really want to get that anabolic window and just squeeze everything you can out of it. And so if you're dieting too soon with no muscle on your frame, first off, you're gonna look like shit. There's just no way about it. You're gonna look like freaking doo-doo because you have no muscle on your frame. There's nothing to shred down and show. And 2, your performance in the gym isn't gonna be that great. You're not really gonna be progressing. While you can still build muscle on a cut when you're first starting out, just because any kind of stimulus, like the body's gonna grow unless you're on really, really low calories. All the studies show that when you first get in the gym, you can still grow muscle even if you're eating in a deficit, but it's not gonna be the most that you could get out of that time period, right? You really wanna, like I said, squeeze it for all the gains that you can. I recommend being at like break-even calories or a slight surplus of calories, like maybe 200 to 300 calorie surplus. That's gonna give you the best results possible. So cutting too soon, typically not in the cards. For my clients, I usually recommend like at least a year to 2 years of really good training, being in a slight surplus, building a solid foundation, then cutting from there. Okay, so I started out really, really skinny, right? I started out, like I said, at 115 pounds, and so what was the first thing that I did? I bulked, and I overshot the bulk by way too much. And this is where a lot of guys go wrong when they first get into the gym, is they think, well, if calories help me grow, more calories is gonna help me grow even more, right? The reality is there's a ceiling on how many calories you can eat to help yourself grow, if that makes sense, right? There's a threshold where it's just diminishing returns and you're just gonna put on excess body fat. And then eventually, when you do decide to cut down, you're gonna have to work from there and it's gonna be a real pain in the ass. What I recommend is like maximum of 500 calorie surplus. Realistically, like 300 calories over your maintenance is gonna be plenty, especially when you're first getting started. So overshooting the bulk is a bad idea. One thing that I did wrong is I had no understanding of macros, I had no understanding of tracking food. So my whole entire motive was just eat anything in sight, and it led to my demise. The best thing you can do is when you first get into the gym, get a solid understanding of nutrition, figure out what your macros are for maintenance, for a bulk, and for a cut, and start logging your food on MyFitnessPal. Get a little weight scale for your food, weigh it out, and make sure you're just hitting those macros consistently instead of doing the bro bulk and eating pizza, pasta, freaking drinking gallons of milk just to get your calories in. It's a bad idea. It's not gonna expedite the process by any means. You're just gonna get fat as shit. All right guys, number 5 is probably my favorite point because it's a little bit counterintuitive. Most people, when they first get in the gym, have no understanding of rest. And I mean it on the micro level and the macro level. So let me explain. Most people when they first get into the gym have very short rest time, right? They're just hammering out their sets. The reality is rest times should be used to your advantage so you can move more weight and do more total volume in your training. Unless you're crunched on time, I don't recommend the whole 30-second to 1 minute rest time scheme. I like a minute to 3 minutes on my compounds. And then as I get further into my workout, I'm doing a little more isolation work, then I'll back down that rest time to about a minute. But when I first started out, I was just flying through my workouts because I was getting a good pump, the intensity felt high, and I thought that's what I needed, when really kind of dialing back that rest time is gonna have a big effect. Again, taking the view a little bit further, training too much and not resting and having days off and having too much training frequency is also gonna have a negative effect on you. When you're training 7 days a week, like I was when I was first getting started, you hit a wall where, one, mentally you lose motivation. Like, you just don't want to go to the gym anymore. You feel frazzled, you feel fried. It's probably why I started crying in the gym. And your body is just not about it. Central nervous system is fried, joints hurt, everything just feels kind of crappy in your body. It's not to your advantage. I recommend when first starting out, 4 to 5 days per week is gonna be plenty. As long as you're getting enough volume in within those workouts, you're gonna be golden, pony boy. There's no point in going 7 days per week unless those workouts are like 20 to 30 minutes a piece. But if you're going in like I was, banging out an hour and a half workout and doing that 7 times per week, it's gonna be to your own demise. So I recommend taking days off from the gym, let your body recover, both from a mental and a physiological state. You're gonna come in feeling so much better. Now take it even one step back and really zooming out on that whole rest principle is the idea of deloading and having training blocks. And this is something that took me like 4 years to figure out, is that there is massive benefit in going really hard for like 12 to 16 weeks, overreaching a bit, really pushing the body, and then dialing it back and letting a process called super compensation occur. Essentially, you overreach a little bit, you have some intense training, you pull back, the body is gonna be like down below its base level, right? Like you just hammered yourself. Instead of coming up just to baseline, it's gonna overreach a little bit and compensate a little bit too much, which is gonna allow you to come back potentially a little bit stronger and a little more apt to handling what was previously challenging. You might be able to handle that a little bit better now. Kind of a poor explanation of super compensation, but I don't wanna go too deep in the weeds in this video. But just know, deloading is your friend. I like to deload for maybe 5 days, maybe 10 days, depending on how hard that training block has been. Then I'll start another training block again. Everyone needs a little bit different rest. So some people can train for 32 weeks and then take a deload and be golden. Other people are gonna train for 8 weeks and then need a deload. You just need to know when to fit that in. And when you're first starting out training, I don't think you need it right off the bat, but I would say within like a year of training, it's probably time to start integrating some deloads and respecting rest. Guys, you have to understand that rest is when your muscles are built. Being in the gym is when you destroy your muscles. Rest and nutrition is when you actually make the gains. You cannot discount it. So there it is, guys. My top 5 tips for guys just getting started in the gym. I wanna let you guys know it can be done. You can make gains even if you're starting out as an ectomorph, you're starting out skinny. I know the process, I've been there. By implementing these 5 things, you will be able to shorten the curve and really expedite the gains by just learning by my mistakes and avoiding them. As I like to say, a word to the wise should be sufficient. You don't have to learn the lessons the hard way. You can take my learning curve, apply it to your training, and make more gains. I'll see you guys in the next video. Be sure to subscribe.